And as always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Tomorrow's National Indigenous Peoples Day, and I think it's incredibly important that we really pause to recognize the many historical wrongs that we need to collectively work on to advance our reconciliation efforts, and to think of ways that we all can do that individually as we go about our business go about our days on this beautiful unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Could I have someone please move adoption of the amended agenda? Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Pettingill. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We don't have any delegations, petitions, or proclamations today, so we'll go to consideration of unscheduled public attendance. So this is the opportunity if there's a member of the public who has a matter that they would like to get before council that can't wait until the next regular business meeting. This would be the time to make yourself known. Seeing none, we'll move on. We have no public hearings or scheduled timed items this evening, so we're on to the consent agenda. Council, does anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda before we consider receipt? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull. No, not sorry from the consent agenda. No, sorry, apologies.
No, we're good on the consent agenda. No, that's totally fine. Okay, so can I have someone move the consent agenda then, please? Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Motion carries. And now we're on to consideration of council committee recommendations from committee of the whole. So firstly, we have the recommendations coming out of the June 13th committee of the whole around North Crumpit. Are you moving that, Councillor French? I'll second that. I'm not seeing any hands for comments. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we had the Squamish Marine Access Review Update and Discussion Draft with some recommendations. Moved by Councillor Stoner. I'll second that. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have recommendation around the Real Estate Facilities Master Plan and General Projects Update. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we have, moving on to bylaws for first three readings, we have a staff presentation for this item. So I will call staff forward to.
Jesse a note.
Maybe we went through that. We were so efficient there that we're great. Well, we'll let me just, we could do some adoptions. Those go quickly, so we'll suspend the order and we'll move on to adoption. And generally with adoption, we have no presentations. That's okay? So we'll move through these and then we'll loop back to the item 9A1. So now we're on 9B1, which is District of Squamish Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw Adoption. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have District of Squamish Flood Protection Upgrades Temporary Borrowing Bylaw number 2985/2023. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Pettingill. Call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have District of Squamish Housing Agreement Bylaw for 1039 Finch Drive for the market rentals. I'll move that. Second by Councillor Stoner. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have District of Squamish Housing Agreement Bylaw for 1039 Finch Drive non-market rentals, and this is number 2965/2023. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor Greenlaw. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And now we'll go back to first three readings, bylaw. So this is 9A sub 1, and we have the staff we need for this. So I'll call staff forward. I saw him. I know he's here. Welcome. I'll turn, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Jesse Morwood. I am the Capital Projects Manager for the District of Squamish. With me tonight is Sarah Bailey, Director of Engineering, and Roland Russell, Senior Financial Analyst, I believe. Tonight we're presenting on the Queensway Lift Station Budget Amendment. The recommendation for the resolution is that the District of Squamish amend the 5-year financial plan to increase the budget for Queensway Lift Station to $6.136 million, and that the district give 3 readings to the District of Squamish 2023-27 5-year financial plan. So I just want to give a brief history on the project. In early January, the manhole adjacent to the Queens lift station failed, and we initiated emergency repairs. We did this by hiring consultants and contractors to develop a kind of integrated design, and the end goal was to replace the failed manhole. At the time, we established the budget was about $2 million. We understood at that time that there were still a lot of moving parts, and our intention at that time that we would revisit and develop a more detailed budget as information became available. Work has been progressing on the manhole, and I'm going to kind of walk through the steps since the initial failure and talk about where it started and where we are today. This is a photo of the original site prior to the manhole failure. On January 14th, the day of the failure, there was kind of a sinkhole initiated around the manhole. Material entered the manhole through a corroded hole, and this happened at significant depth, approximately 5 meters below ground. The manhole corrosion was due to the presence of hydrogen sulfide, which attacks the concrete and erodes it, as well as erodes the metal. We established pumps right away to bypass the failed manhole. It was a fairly sophisticated setup. So we sent all the sanitary flows from downtown to North Yards to the Queensway lift station. All this flow, we sent it directly to the wastewater treatment plant, effectively bypassing the manhole. The second stage was once we had isolated the sanitary flow away from the manhole, we had to effectively build a cage around the existing manhole so that we could safely dig down, excavate the material, and then eventually replace the manhole. So what you see here is shoring, which is effectively the cage around our work site. This is not typical excavation. It's very extensive and complex, and you have to dewater as well, which we have some more photos, I believe, that we can get into. So here's a little bit more, another photo that kind of shows how complicated it is. We had to support the shoring. There was lock blocks you can see that are also ensuring that the shoring did not collapse upon itself. There's utilities in the area that we had to deal with, including there's a power pole right behind the shoring that you can see. Overall, it's very, very challenging work. There was also utilities in the area, in this case, BC Hydro utilities. Because we were working in close proximity, we had to develop methods to support the utilities so they didn't move or change alignment. And this was kind of a custom work that we had to do. These are what you call I-beams, and was custom fabricated for the work. We also, once we got down a little bit farther, we had to deal with the dewatering. Water levels in general in Squamish are quite high, especially at this site where you're not much higher than ground level, sea level. So we have to dewater a massive amount of water, and how we do that is we installed effectively, they're called well points, and they're placed all around the site. All the water is collected through a massive pump, and this is then pumped to a nearby ditch, and this is a constant 24-hour process that we have to monitor and staff. These are photos of the dewatering discharge location. We had to set up erosion control sediment to make sure that any sediment from the groundwater did not get into the nearby watercourses. As we continue to move down, we've set up all our dewatering, and so you can also see the top of the existing manhole. So that's getting to the bottom of the hole, and that's where the original manhole comes into the adjacent lift station. This photo is showing us as basically removing the bottom of a manhole. What you can see here is that adjacent to the manhole is a gravity sewer pipe. So there's two pipes that come into the manhole before they go into the wet well. What we found and what we didn't know until we excavated was that the adjacent gravity sewer had also settled effectively. It's very important. The grades of gravity sewers it's very key that their elevation is precise. And as a result of this, we've since are developing a plan to replace this gravity sewer, which is additional scope that we didn't originally anticipate. This is a cost, is going to cause significant cost to the project, and certainly was unanticipated. So this is the photo on the right there is a recent photo from this week. So we're finally at the bottom of the excavation. We're building on the left photo is building the formwork for all our concrete and rebar, and this is going to serve as the base for the new manhole. This was one of the things at the start of the project that we hadn't done the detailed design on. The main reason is that we wanted to excavate the hole and be able to, again, accurately understand all the different infrastructure that's in there because we didn't have very accurate drawings. And so this took extra time to the project, and there was extra costs as a result of extra engineering fees and some extra charges associated with the dewatering that we're doing 24/7.
Sorry, I see a question from council on this particular slide, so I'll just stop you there if that's okay. Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm curious for context, what depth down are we looking at in that picture? Well, I guess the two pictures are the same depth, I believe. So how many meters down are we looking at there?
Yeah, through the mayor, I believe it's 6 to 7 meters at that point.
Thank you. Any other questions on this slide before we move on? Okay, go ahead.
So we have taken the opportunity to do a very detailed inspection of the adjacent wet well. So again, the manhole feeds the wet well, which is the main kind of chamber for the sewer before it's pumped to the wastewater treatment plant. We've done a very detailed inspection. This was a really good timing to do this. We could not do this without the current bypass that we have set up. There was also very challenging work-safe procedures that we had to establish as part of this of inspecting the wet well. And again, this was the opportunity that we could do this. So we've done an inspection, and what we've found is that there is also significant H2S corrosion within the wet well itself. On the right, what you see is there's lines there on the right photo, and what that effectively is, the smooth concrete is where the existing kind of the main kind of the sewer levels kind of fluctuated. Above that is where the gases, the H2S gases, have corroded the wet well itself. This is premature wear. We're in the middle of getting our consultant is doing the analysis at this point. But what they have kind of initially indicated is that this is fairly high priority to repair. And so as part of this budget amendment, and certainly beyond the initial scope of the project, is that we're requesting funds in order to address this additional corrosion that we're finding in the wet well. As a side note, we are also in the process of trying to address the origins of the H2S, the hydrogen sulfide gases. This is addressed at a different lift station upstream, if you will, of the Queensway lift station, and that's another project that we're preparing for next year. Here is some more photos of the infrastructure. These is pipe work that's found in the well. Again, significant H2S corrosion, which not only affects concrete, but also affects metal as well. Also in the bottom, when we actually took all the, drained the wet well of all the sewer, there was other components that were found in the bottom of the wet well. As you can see, there's some, on the right-hand side, there's multiple different components that were found. This is, again, additional work, so not just relining the wet well, we're also planning to replace these components in the wet well itself to have a rehabilitated wet well at the end of this project.
So I'll speak briefly to the budget implications of this project. In the current 5-year plan, we have a project to replace the Queensway lift station valued at $2 million. We are looking at increasing that value from 2 million to just over 6 million, as indicated. And as a result, we will be reducing the amount currently held in the wastewater reserve by the same $4 million plus. So the wastewater reserve at the end of 2023 was projected to have a balance of $10 million. That $10 million reflects a project cost of $2 million. So now we are projecting the wastewater reserve we'll have a balance of approximately $6 million, reflecting the additional $4 million being reduced from the reserve to pay for this project. Obviously, if we are able to complete the capital works at a cost that is less than the total $6 million, we would require less reserve funding to pay for this project, and that would increase the remaining balance at the end of the year.
This brings us to the end of presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council, questions? Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, thanks. Got a few. The hydrogen sulfide, is it possible that there's a natural source, or does this suggest that something is being put into the sewers that shouldn't be?
The hydrogen sulfide is common, especially with sanitary force mains and the turbulence it causes with it being a pressurized system. In this particular location, the hydrogen sulfide is exacerbated due to the length of force main we have. So this goes from Central Lift Station downtown to Queensway in the industrial park. And that length of time allows for an increase in the buildup of anaerobic material causing the hydrogen sulfide. So it's not, this is a natural process that happens, but is exacerbated by that length of force main. And as Jesse has alluded to, there's a plan, I believe, in the budget for injection at Central Lift Station to try and mitigate that risk of the hydrogen sulfide buildup at source.
Okay, thanks. So that was going to be my follow-up. We, I guess, would treat with another chemical that sort of took care of it, as opposed to using different materials in the construction.
Through the chair, it is a bit of both. These manholes weren't lined. Typically, when we have force mains dumping into gravity lines and there's that increase in turbulence in the manholes are lined. So we do take that additional measure with the material for any of those circumstances for the force mains into gravity systems. And then on top of that, the system that'll go in at Central.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question, we rely on our master plans to make sure that the sort of infrastructure we're staying on top of it. But this was somewhat unexpected. Does this give us pause or sort of make us wonder if we need an update to our master plans? Or can you speak to how, I guess, our level of certainty on our current master plans?
Yes, I can speak to that. I don't think we can say this one was a surprise. If you remember, we did have this one go out for tender twice. So while the failure was a bit of a surprise and obviously unanticipated, this manhole was identified in our lift station assessment report, which did call for its replacement, which then got it put on a capital project. And it was budget constraints that didn't allow the project to proceed initially. Our master plans, we are updating them as per the requirements in the OCP and keeping an eye on these things. We aren't foreseeing any other issues like this. This is just an unfortunate situation.
Thank you. Other questions, Council? Councillor French, then Hamilton.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm wondering if the project team has a timeline for when this project is expected to be completed. And I'll get a little bit ahead of what I think the answer is going to be by pointing out that I recognize that this project seems to me to be comparable to renovating a really old home where you pull one wall down and unexpectedly find asbestos, which you then remove and discover all the beams are rotten, and then you discover that the floors are completely rotted out. So is there a timeline though at this point?
Thank you for the question through the mayor. I also appreciate your analogy, so thank you for that. It's not far off. Yes, we do have a timeline for the immediate scope of work. It's anticipated will be finished by September. However, as I mentioned, we're doing a detailed inspection right now on the lift station itself, and that will be additional scope and additional time in addition to to September. So we don't have a definitive time schedule on that piece of it, but I am anticipating likely this fall or winter. Thank you.
Okay. And one of the reasons that I'm asking that question is to hopefully get to a bit of an idea of when the traffic flow might return to normal on Cleveland. You know, it's a 30K zone and it's really tight and it's challenging for cyclists and pedestrians. And the sooner we can get that traffic flow back to normal, the better for the community, as long as we're not sacrificing safety. But I'll leave that. And so my next question was around the cost escalation and potential subsequent reinvigoration of the wastewater reserve. So I'm wondering, this is probably for Mr. Russell, if our taxpayers should anticipate that utility bills are going to be a little higher next year than maybe we were anticipating, and maybe even subsequent years to reinvest in the wastewater reserve?
Through the mayor, the answer to that question is yes, they should. Although this is not a surprise increase, looking at the 5-year plan that has been approved, we had maintained the sewer rate at the level that it is now for both 22 and 23, but we were anticipating resuming increases in wastewater utility rates commencing in 2024, and we anticipate that we will continue on with that program. So we had basically built a lull in because prior to this, we felt that the reserve was at a stage where it will be able to fund the anticipated capital projects that were coming forward. Obviously, if your capital project cost has ballooned, such as this one, that is somewhat unanticipated. So we were looking at increasing utility rates in 2024 and onward, and we will be assessing the overall requirement of what the new utility rates will need to be. That will be based on the capital costs that are in the upcoming financial plan that we're looking at right now, and also what our asset management targets need to be to ensure that we can maintain an appropriate level of capital infrastructure repairs on an ongoing basis.
Great. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. Through the chair, thank you very much for all your work on this. I'm sure Councillor French's analogy holds very true. How long, when was this infrastructure installed? How old is it?
Through the chair, approximately 25 years. Don't quote me, but it's around 25 years, and certainly is prematurely aged. Normally, this type of infrastructure would last a lot longer than that.
Okay, and how long do we anticipate this installation, the new installation? What is the approximate lifetime of the new installation?
Yeah, through the chair. There's different types of materials that we can use to reline the wet well and the manhole. On the manhole, I think it's a 50-year lifespan. On the wet well, we haven't got to that level of detailed design as far as what rehab we will do. But I believe it's 25 to 50 years as well.
And if I may, Chair, final question. We're obviously in a situation now where we've torn apart the walls of the house, and we're into it. What are the consequences of not approving this budget amendment now?
Through the chair, I can speak to that. There's consequences on a few different levels. We have to be mindful that we have engineers involved in this project and engineers of record, and those engineers are only willing to sign off on us opening this infrastructure if we have completed this to a certain level of design. So, and we want to be following those recommendations of the engineers. So to some point, we can't go back and live in the house unless it's signed off. So there's that portion which comes from the engineers. So we need their sign off to decommission that bypass pumping system. In addition to that, if we don't approve the budget amendment, I think contractually we could be in a difficult situation. We want to keep this project going and see this through to completion.
Thank you, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, in 2021, we had a budget line item for lift station condition assessment. And Ms. Bailey, I think you mentioned this. I'm just curious, is that project complete? And if not, where is it in terms of its completion stage?
Yes, so that budget line item was for that condition assessment report. So the district paid a consultant who analyzed all of our lift stations and took a look at which ones needed replacement and what elements of the lift station. Some were mechanical and electrical items that needed replaced, some were condition, some were safety, some were redundancy. So we have a long list of different items that are required for repair of our lift stations. And Jesse can speak to the line items we have going forward, but we've taken that report then and whittled it down to what we feel is a priority. I can speak a little bit more to the budget planning process we're going through as a team. We've had a much more collaborative approach this year and made sure we've brought together the infrastructure planning, capital development, and major projects together. So we're not looking at these reports in isolation. We're taking a look at what needs doing, but with the mind also what development is coming and how that might change our plans. The lift station condition assessment is one piece of the puzzle that we're trying to then pull these other pieces in. So we are making educated decisions ourselves, whether or not, if it's rated high here, how do we feel about that given development that's coming and who might come along to replace it after that. So that condition assessment report is completed, and we're going through that verification process of prioritizing the upgrades. And Jesse can speak a little bit more to the budgetary items that have fed from that report.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. So next year we have, I believe, approximately $800,000 of work directly related to that condition assessment report. So we actually we've already started hiring a consultant to prepare the designs, and so the implementation is planned to happen next year. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. And then just a follow-on question in terms of the impact that this is having. So my understanding is that the scope of this project is actually quite large relative to our annual repair and maintenance projects for the wastewater utility. So from a budget perspective is one component, but then there's also the staff capacity. So has this pushed other projects off in terms of delivery for 2023? And how do we anticipate to catch up in 2024 if they have?
Sorry, one moment. Thanks for the minute. Yes, this has taken staff capacity. There's no doubt about it. Thankfully, once you're into the contract, we have a contract administrator who's helping run us through that process, which helps to mitigate that. In addition, as I mentioned, we have engineers, and those engineers have field inspectors that are keeping an eye on things for us. So it's not as if we have staff out there every day, but definitely this has affected staff capacity. It also has affected our ability to complete other projects this year. And that's something we're looking at as we approach the 2024 budget. And we'll come back with items for council consideration at that time.
Thank you, Council. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
I think we may have touched on this previously, but just to be clear, if I understood we had identified this as an important project before the failure. We didn't budget quite enough, so it didn't get done. Is there anything else that we're aware of in that same sort of situation now, or are we? This was sort of, everything else. We have the time to go through the normal budgeting process, and maybe we're going to be a little more cautious in terms of that. But is there anything sort of big like this possibly outstanding right now?
Through the chair, I think you've alluded to it. I think we might take a more conservative approach moving forward. We're not foreseeing anything major, but we are taking this opportunity to more closely examine our master plans, and some of them are currently being updated. Both the sewer and water are currently in the works. We have a strategic project that we had previously identified for master plan audits. We've pulled forward some of that work to go through our master plans. We have 26 engineering related master plans that we're looking at, but we have focused pretty closely on water and sanitary this year to take an extra look. But the answer is no, we're not foreseeing anything of this magnitude. This was obviously somewhat unanticipated and unfortunate. What is important is that we keep doing the work we're doing with the audit of the master plan, keeping our master plans updated, and being strategic and maybe slightly more conservative when we're coming to council with risks in mind.
Thank you for that. Any other questions while we're here? I'll venture one of my own then. What has been our sort of annual reserve contribution of late to the wastewater reserve?
The reserve through the mayor, the reserve contribution to the wastewater reserve has been averaging between $2 to $3 million over the last, say, 3 years. That's contribution in, probably closer to 2.5 million to 3 million. There's also annual draws against that. So we're not seeing the reserve itself go up by $2.5 or $3 million, but the contribution has been in the range of $2.5 to $3 million per year.
Thank you. That's good. Just helpful context and to put these numbers in context for me. If there's no other questions, I'd entertain a motion here or welcome. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton. Sorry, I had all three of you. I'm going to go Hamilton, French, then Stoner. Unless you're making a motion, Councillor Hamilton, is that what you're saying? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just looking to move the staff recommendation that the district amend the 5-year financial plan to increase the budget of the Queensway Lift Station replacement project to $6.136 million.
I'll second that, and I'd like to speak to it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hamilton, would you like to speak to your motion? No, go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. And, when I first opened up this report a few days ago, I suffered some serious sticker shock. $6.136 million is a lot of taxpayer money. And I'd like to thank staff for walking me off that sticker shock ledge by providing us with a report that I think reassured me that this project is in good hands. And tonight's presentation with those images and those photos and the context around being down 6 to 7 meters in an H2S environment, that is really serious safety and big time engineering challenges. And I recognize that $6.136 million is the type of money that it takes to deal with the emergency that is being dealt with at Queensway. And Ms. Bailey, thanks for reminding us that the people that we're working with are qualified engineers who have many years of education behind them to make sure that this repair is done professionally, done the way that it needs to be, and hopefully leaves us with infrastructure that will serve us for decades to come. So I'm supporting the staff recommendation because I believe that excellent work has been done on this project, and this is what it's going to take to rebuild the infrastructure that's so vital.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner?
Thank you. Through the chair, I too will be supporting the motion on the floor and want to thank staff for their work in managing this really complex project. It was unexpected. And so despite some of my council colleagues' questions around how we plan for the unexpected, it's really hard to do so. But I am grateful to previous councils who foresaw the importance of putting money away in our utility reserves in particular to help cover us when something like this does happen. And for me, this is a big lesson learned as we go into the 2024 budget, both how can we be more conservative in terms of understanding where we're at for our master planning processes and appreciate the work that staff are doing to audit some of those, as well as we recently completed our asset management plan more broadly. And so how do we incorporate the learnings from that and rebuild our reserves after such a significant draw? So those are things that I'll be looking for in the 2024 budget. But for now, willing to support the motion on the floor so that we can keep this important work going and get the Queensway lift station back functional. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, thanks. I'll also be supporting this. I think my point of reference for master plans and related things is reserve fund studies when I was on a condo board many years ago. And the sort of audit was every 3 years. And I understand we have much bigger sets of infrastructure, and that may not be practical, but it does underscore the value of these audits. And it is maybe something we want to consider going forward, the frequency or the amount of budget we give to ongoing auditing. And, you know, sometimes it allows you to move some of this work forward, you catch it sooner. Sometimes too, you can push stuff back. And so maybe I'm just being overly optimistic, but maybe as part of this audit, we will find some other infrastructures in better shape and we can push it off and help mitigate some of this longer term reserve impact. So it's unfortunate that we're having to face this, but I'm very glad we're doing the audit and making sure that we stay as on top of the reserve fund as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm speaking in favor of the motion. I'm happy that we have this reserve to look after emerging issues, which this is exactly that. I question the what the appropriate amount is for reserve. This is a big project, and this is a draw that represents a large percentage of that. So I know this is work ongoing, and we'll need to establish what that maybe revisit what the appropriate level for that reserve is. There was a bit of a perfect storm with this project happening during coming through COVID and the quite remarkable cost escalation, cost spike that we all experienced in our daily lives, and no different here at the municipality. And we'd like to think that type of thing doesn't happen again. However, we need to plan as with as many things taken into consideration as possible. So I know we are going to learn from take the lessons learn from this and apply it going forward. And thank you for all the work. And I really did find the visual pieces today, as much as I've had a site tour and all the rest, were extremely helpful. So thank you for putting that together and helping build the context for all of us. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We do have a second motion here, which is to that we give the financial bylaw, the amendment bylaw 2995/2023 be given first three readings. Is that moved by Councillor French? Second by Councillor Hamilton. Any comments? I think we looked after that last time. Great. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay. And thank you, staff. So moving on, we've we have no item 10 staff reports. We have no staff reports. We had no late agenda items. Item 12 correspondence action requested. We actually have 2 letters there for council consideration. I have the that's okay. So council, I'm just glad it wasn't me. Sorry, I'm gonna get the letter in front of me here. Page is it? 77. 77, thank you. Page 77. Oh, no, 74. Sorry, thank you. Thank you. So we're being asked here to for a resolution around $10 a day daycare. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Just sort of clarifying, I think our normal process, as I understand, this is a resolution going before UBCM and it's asking us to support it at UBCM. And I believe our normal process is to leave it up to receive these and leave it up to individual councillors to vote on the floor at UBCM rather than adopting these here now.
Yep, this is for our consideration, and that has generally been the practice, and perhaps something at some point crosses a threshold where we would like to support it in a different way, but that's the conversation we're having now. Is that okay? Councillor French, did you have your hand? Yep.
I was thinking just receive and file, but maybe I'm premature with that motion, so I'm standing by with that motion.
Okay. Seeing no other hands on this, I generally align with Councillor Pettingill on this one. This is a motion that is coming to UBCM, so I think your motion would be totally appropriate, Councillor French, if you'd like to make that.
Right. I'll move that we receive and file the letter from S. Gregson, Coalition of Childcare Advocates of BC.
Great, thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Second by Councillor Greenlaw. Any comments on this? I'll just, oh, sorry, did you want to comment? Go ahead, Councillor Greenlaw.
Oh, yes, I was just going to say that as I'm directed to create a meeting request for the ministry, I'll probably be incorporating some of these points. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. And yeah, thank you for that. I also think this is an important topic, and just remind council that those resolution sessions are really important, and going to them prepared is very, very important to make sure we have the outcome that we're after. So I do appreciate that this group brought this forward and put it more solidly on our radars, this motion, and I'll be looking forward at UBCM. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have 12 correspondence action requested 12-2, which is from Tracy Saxby and My Sea to Sky. Councillor Pettingill, did you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, and to briefly summarize, there's Fortis apparently has a pending discharge permit application before the BC Energy Regulator, and it seems from what My Sea to Sky has written that they have fallen short in terms of their public engagement and public notification. Reading through some of My Sea to Sky's concerns, I had an opportunity to look back at a council video. So about 2.5 weeks prior to this public engagement at issue, Fortis did present to council, and at that presentation, they did let us know, and the public as part of that meeting, that there was an engagement coming up on the days in question, but they didn't speak to it being about the effluent permit at all. It was more presented as a general engagement. And one of my colleagues, Councillor Stoner at the time, asked the Forest representative about their permitting requirements around effluent and so on. And the response from Fortis was that they weren't sure they would have to get back to us. So I think this underscores the fact that the community was not really given good notice about what the engagement was about. It sort of reinforces what My Sea to Sky is claiming in terms of there wasn't the required amount of public notice or discussion and information. I think the other piece, I reached out to the House on Biosphere, and they are, among others, interested in understanding the impacts of these effluents, especially cumulatively with wood fibers. So I have a motion I would like to propose if council is willing.
I'd say
Okay, so
proceed with your proposed motion.
I will read, whereas Forest BC has a pending decision on an effluent permit where there's significant public interest, but Forest BC's public engagement and notice of the permit was significantly lacking, and whereas local and regional groups and others would like to review and provide feedback on Forest BC's effluent permit request, along with wood fiber LNG's effluent permit requests, especially in consideration of cumulative effluent impacts. Therefore, be it resolved that the mayor communicate with the BC Energy Regulator to request that it provide the public with a more adequate opportunity to review and provide feedback on Fortis BC's effluent permit requests, and that Fortis be required to provide more adequate public information about the permit requests and feedback opportunities. And resolve that the request also be shared with Squamish Nation, BC EAO, Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Engineering, Fortis BC, Wood Fiber LNG, MP Patrick Weiler, MLA Jordan Sturdy, and any other parties the mayor deems relevant. And I will forward that to staff.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion, or can we get this motion in front of everybody in some way? It seems to be well crafted. There was a lot to it. I just want to make sure we all understand what it is
It's in our email,
we have it all now. Okay.
3:40 p.m. this afternoon.
Okay. Great. So is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. Councillor Pettigal, would you like to speak to your motion?
I think I've spoken to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm speaking in favor of the motion, and I'd like to thank Councillor Pettingill for doing the work and backtracking to the meeting video from many months ago to learn what there was to learn out of that meeting and how it relates to the letter in front of us. And I'm supportive of this motion because I feel that both Woodfibre LNG and Fortis BC need to do a better job of consulting with our community. And I think that's what this motion speaks to. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Just echoing my council colleagues' comments, and thanks for pulling up the words that I spoke a few years ago when I actually directly asked them what the engagement process was meant to be. And here we are 2 years later without having had that engagement, without having had any sort of consultation, despite numerous asks for it. I don't think it's hard to meet that bar, and it's definitely something that the BC Energy Regulator needs to be aware of. That once again, Fortis has failed to properly consult and at the very least provide notification to our community that this is what's happening. So happy to support this motion. Thank you for Councillor Pettingill for bringing it forward.
Thank you. I'm speaking in favor of the motion. I think this is a great example of the types of challenges that our community has been having with interacting with this project. And I'm happy to spread the word on that. But this is also really one symptom, and there's a long list of things such as this. So, but I'm happy to take this forward as a case study that it is to make those points. Oh, sorry, Councillor Greenlaw.
Oh, yeah, I also just wanted to speak in favor of the motion. I've been very surprised by the level of public consultation that's been going on throughout these projects, and not just the public consultation, but also consultation with local governments. And I think this is a recurring systemic issue that really needs to be addressed as it impacts unwitting citizens all over the province. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, we have no correspondence referred from the consent agenda. Item 14, we have no approval of minutes referred from the consent agenda. So we're on to 15, business arising from the minutes. And we have the letter from Ms. Kennedy from Woodfibre LNG around the Gender Safety Advisory Committee and related correspondence here for our consideration. Last we discussed this, I was directed to ask for the some more details around specifically the terms of reference of this group, so we could better understand what this was all about. And we haven't received the terms of reference back yet. I say yet, assuming that it is coming. So I wanted to just to check that, see if that piece of information was still needed, or if there was some action that we should be taking it with the information that we have so far. Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thanks. I was also at our last discussion around this directed to go and do a little bit more outreach with some of the other organizations that are participating, and I have done that to some degree, and have learned that there is a fair bit of optimism in the opportunity that has been presented. So we still don't have the terms of reference, which I think makes it challenging to know exactly what we're committing to. The request is for the district, for somebody from council to act as an observer to the process. The general sense that I have gotten is that would be welcomed by most folks who are participating in the committee. And I think, as I've reflected on it a bit more, it could be really helpful for us to understand what the bar is being set by Woodfibre, especially in relation to what our expectations could or should be of Fortis BC. So Fortis is at the table as a observer as well, not necessarily a participant in the roundtable or in the advisory committee. But given where we're at with these two projects and the proposals that are in front of us, I think the reality is that for gender safety and impacts in our community, Fortis is likely to have a bigger impact as it currently sits than Woodfibre, just based on where they plan on hosting their temporary workers. And so I think gleaning some insights from what's happening at the at the Woodfibre table may be beneficial for us as we consider what our expectations should be of Fortis if we continue to, or as they continue to pursue their temporary use permits for their temporary work lodge. So those are my current thoughts, is that it might actually be beneficial to have somebody sit, at least at the beginning of this process, to better understand it. That being said, we still don't have a terms of reference, so it's unclear what we're sending somebody into, but those are my meandery thoughts at the moment.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to remember I know when this started, but do we have any idea when the next meeting is and how the urgency is around this decision?
Yeah, the first meeting was held at the beginning of June. It was June 1st, and their anticipation is that they would have monthly meetings, at least for the start. So I suspect that the next one isn't too far off, but I don't actually have a date.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Thanks. My colleagues' comments about why we might participate do resonate with me. I think and it maybe makes sense to, I'm not sure if we need to appoint Councillor Stoner to this. I would suggest, especially in lieu of a terms of reference, we provide some framing of the participation from our side, and in particular in my mind is clarification on participation versus endorsement, and they're very different things, and maybe some clarification on use of logos or not, and that sort of thing, just to provide that clarity from our side, but be happy to have Councillor Stoner attend and observe.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on this? Councillor Greenlaw?
To my mind, I think it's beneficial to gather information whenever you can, right? I do think it is beneficial for us to be around the table. And if Councillor Stoner is not available, I could also volunteer for it, or anybody else who wants to do it. Thanks.
Thank you. I think maybe this is a two-part decision. One is, do we want to send someone? And then two is, who's the most appropriate to do that? And whether that is an elected official or staff, I do think that is a discussion. However, I think staff has a lot to do, and we've already taken a lot of staff bandwidth in this overall project. I do think my feeling is that it's best with a council member, but that's maybe those are the way to break this into the two pieces, and whether we want to wait for the terms of reference. So do we need an additional piece of information? And then those two decisions is where I'm looking for some. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
I think this is a really important topic, and I'm actually impressed that Woodfibre is approaching this, but I absolutely believe it's important that we get a terms of reference for this committee before we commit anybody's time to attending the meetings, because this is the type of action that can be simply for show and not for content. And I think terms of reference written down are the only way that we can see what the actual action, what the actual impact and the actual authority of this committee might actually be. So I think it's extraordinarily important that we have a terms of reference before we commit any participant.
Okay, thank you. So with that, maybe, go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Chair. I am definitely feeling that if we commit to participating in this, it should be a council member and not a staff member. As previously noted, our staff are already above their eyeballs on this particular file, and to direct or expect a staff member to take this on additionally, I think is not a good use of our staff time. And also, Woodfibre LNG, as I understand it, mindfully invited a council member to participate in this committee. And there was some discussion within the corporation of whether it should be an invitation to a staff member or a council member. And after contemplation, it was settled that a councillor should be invited and a councillor was invited. So just to reiterate, I'm supportive of having a councillor participate in this committee if we're going to get involved after we see the terms of reference.
Okay. Well, maybe what we should do with this is refer this to a future meeting once we have the for consideration once the requested information is provided. So I'll move that we do that. Refer to future meeting when requested information is provided. Second by Councillor Stoner. I feel like we've made comments on this, so I'll just call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. So we had no committee minutes and reports. Any notice of motion? Seeing none. We have council, staff, and camera announcements. We have none. We had no unscheduled public attendance. We are on to open question period. If anyone has any questions, anyone in attendance has or online has any questions for clarification related to the agenda items. Seeing none, council or staff announcements. Yeah,
just on that last item of the open question period, is there anybody actually monitoring our online activity? If there is somebody online who wanted to ask a question, are we looking for any indication?
Yes, we are. And there is a difference. I'll take this up. This is a great, thank you for bringing that up. There's a difference between watching the stream and being in the meeting. and you need to be in the meeting to be able to ask a question. And the directions are quite clear out there if you seek it out. But if anyone has had any troubles with that, please reach out to us, and we'll close the loop for you on that. And do you have something for this, Ms. Linday?
Just as follow up as well, Robin's not in the room right now, but as corporate officer, she does monitor. So she's online monitoring, and our IT staff in the back as well. So we don't miss people.
Yeah, thank you. But I have heard some confusion around, oh, I want to, but you're watching the stream and not in the meeting. So I've given people maybe some time to go from the stream to the meeting if they wanted, but I don't think that we're going to get there today. But there you go. Okay, so next is councillor staff announcements. Councillor French.
Thanks, Chair. I wanted to share that on Sunday, the Squamish Off-Road Triathlon was held at Alice Lake, the first Squamish Off-Road Triathlon in 3 years. Of course, like most other events of this type, COVID wiped it out for a couple of years. And it was very well attended by participants. And of course, a small army of volunteers came together to pull it off. The thunder and lightning Saturday night had me very worried that I might be holding the announcer's microphone the next morning and have my own life at risk. But thankfully, the weather improved, and it ended up being an amazing event that I think was very successful. So congratulations to all the athletes that took part, and a big thank you to the volunteers who helped make it happen.
Thank you for that. Any other updates? Councillor Pettigal?
Yeah, a few things. On Saturday, it was a super busy day. So I attended the sick parade and incredible turnout and just activity downtown between that and the farmers market. With some of the other things that are going on in the news, was good, I think, to have the community come together in a positive way and to have such just a wonderful event. It's always one of the highlights every year in Squamish. The West Winds had another art show. It wasn't as successful as the last one because so many people were at the parade, I think, but still good. I caught the tail end and saw a few pieces of incredible art. Two other things. I mentioned this actually during the Squamish Marine Access Review discussions. Riding through Rose Park the last couple of weeks, I've seen at least one blue heron every time, and it just reminds me how lucky we are to live where we do, and how close we are to nature and wildlife, and how important it is to protect it, and just always very thankful when I see that. The final thing I want to mention is Amped in the Park starts this coming Thursday, so I'm very excited. I mean, that one's very close to my heart. Very excited for another summer of fun in Junction Park.
Thank you for that. Council, any other updates? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to reflect back a few weeks ago on Saturday was the Pride Picnic in the park, which was a really fabulous event, and was standing in as acting mayor for you, Mayor Herford, and it was really great celebration of the openness of our community. There was lots of bubbles, lots of face painting, drag story time in the park, just a really, really fabulous event for everybody to show up and show support and solidarity for our 2S LGBTQIA+ community in the District of Squamish. And then later on in that week was a celebration at Totem Hall for Christine Baker. It was her retirement party. So was fortunate enough to pop in there and celebrate all that Christine has provided so broadly to the community of Squamish, both Squamish Nation and beyond. And she continues to sit on a few boards. The library board is one. The Squamish Community Housing Society is another, and just so amazing how much she has given over her career. And I don't think it'll stop just because she's retiring, but it was really fabulous to be able to celebrate her amongst our community.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for that, and Chris. And yeah, such a powerhouse. And I'm I'm sure she will be roped into many things still, even though she's officially retired, as tends to be the nature of folks that getting involved or that involved in their community. Any other updates before I move on to mine? Okay, so I've had a very busy last while, and I've taken the extra step of having a quick presentation put together here so I can run you through some of the pieces. The idea is that a picture is worth 1,000 words, so maybe you'll get away with a few less 1,000 words from me in my mayor's update. And here we go. So on June 7th to 9th, I attended the Community Forest Association of British Columbia's annual general conference. And if you want to go to the next slide, this is the some of the sponsors here. And this, of course, I'm on the board of the Community Forest here, and which is the first ever partnership between the district and the nation. And all community forests have this structure. So it was really great to hear a lot of success stories around what can happen and what can be accomplished through the community forest. And there were, I'll just run through sort of some of the sessions. Some on governance, not super fun. Resiliency through fire, prescribed fire, Indigenous-led, cultural-led burning was a session. Bridging cultures, a framework for collaboration between Indigenous and non-Indigenous knowledge systems. It's more than just old growth, how old growth strategic review positions us for the future forest management. Community forest communications around engagement, understanding, and action. The future of wildland urban interface, which is wildfire. Community Forest Board governance essentials, and wildfire resiliency roundtable. And around the whole event, everyone was both extremely generous with their time, particularly the folks from the Williams Lake Community Forest that won a big award there, and particularly Anne Louie, who's the former chief of the Williams Lake Indian Band, and it was instrumental in establishing their community forest, just sharing a lot of knowledge. And they had just done some prescribed burns, informed by the First Nations firekeepers, which I hadn't even heard that term before, to help manage their fire risk and return fire to their land. And everyone at the conference, while being generous and coming all the way from wherever they were to wherever the home was to Kamloops, was really on edge because of fire. And if you go to the next slide, this is one of the more powerful images that was displayed, and I think really shows the importance of ensuring we have resilient communities. And, that play structure is supposed to be full of children with not a care in the world, but sliding down that slide. And clearly this community is evacuated. So every time a cell phone buzzed in that room, everyone was very much on edge, as we don't want this to happen in their communities. I think on the coast here, we take a little for granted that we are just that little bit wetter, but with what's happening on the island, in our coastal rainforest right now, these are things that we really need to consider. And it really drove that home for me. And this was an image that was donated for the silent auction, and it's extremely powerful. Although I don't know which wall to hang. I would hang something like that on, but I didn't bid on it. But this does lead to sort of the importance. The other important piece of this work is community resiliency, as well as working with our partners at the nation. Can we go to the next slide, please? A little bit happier. So we have upcoming on Wednesday, June 28th. We have our Squamish Community Forest open house from 3:30 to 6:30, which is a drop-in at the Squamish Public Library. Two of our consultants were at the conference as well. So and there'll be members of the board there. So if you have curiosity about community forest, please attend. And this will start to go out through other channels as well, but there's a sneak peek for that. And then you can go next slide, please. So Mayor's Luncheon was on June 14th. Thank you to the Chamber for putting on the event and giving the platform for me to communicate out. Really, the main focus was our new strategic plan. You can go next slide. And you can see the strategic plans there in the background. Let's go next slide. It shows that there's actually people there. That first one just shows the plan, but and confirms that I do talk with my hands a lot. So thank you to council that was able to attend, and for staff for the prep work for the event, as well as being in the room to help answer questions and just generally be present. It was great to be with our business community and try to articulate what what it is that we do here and what we aspire to do with our strategic plan. We'll go next, please. So later that day, we had our last youth council meeting. So we go next slide. So this is youth council. I think we took this in the winter. So it was our final meeting, and just it's been incredible to work with this group. We achieved such great things. I know many of you were at the Bears Den event, and there's lots of talk about what other things could be achieved, and how that event could be refined as we go into next year's youth council. So I'd like to thank Christine, who is our facilitator for the last few years, and as well as to Tori in communications, who was just really instrumental in the success of youth council this year. And I know that all of these folks are going to go forward and do great things. And thank you for the counselors also that in their role as acting mayor were able to attend. And I know the youth council really appreciates getting a chance to meet all of us. And interestingly, when polled, the favorite meeting of youth council was the one where they sat in these seats in the most formal way that we had. And I thought that was going to be a stretch for them, because this is a challenging environment sometimes. But that was a really interesting takeaway. So and there is an appetite for more consultation going forward, which I think is great, because I had some concerns, and the facilitator did as well, but overwhelming them with engaging that way and keeping it to a different level. So it was really, that was great. Okay, next slide. So I received this invitation, and this is an invitation to join. Basically to go to a reception aboard a Japanese Navy vessel. And given the conversation we've been having with our sister city and so on, I took them up on this invitation. So if you're gonna go next slide, please. So this is on the 15th, so the next day. So there's two vessels there. One is the JS Kashima in the foreground, and in the background is Harakazi, I think. These ships are part of the Japanese Marine Self-Defense Force, and they're training vessels. So aboard these ships, you can see the white uniforms there, are all officers in training, and they're on a 6-month tour, stopping at different ports. And part of their training is to receive guests and to practice their English and so on. So at every turn, there was a very willing officer in training, looking forward to practicing their English and engaging. And it was really, it was quite remarkable. So 492 feet is the one in the background. So these are big boats. with multiple engines that put out 26,000 horsepower each. That's really quite remarkable. If you can go next slide, please. Oh, can we play this? This is on the boat. There is sound, but the sound isn't that good. So this is the, I just tried to do a panorama to share what sort of thing is happening here. This is on the back deck of the far boat. So lots of people, and I'll just talk through while this is sort of testing our bandwidth, I think. So the reception was on both sides. There's that little plank to go between the two vessels, and you're quite high above the water at that point. Trying to give you some sense of scale. And it was a really interesting opportunity to meet with people from the Japanese Canadian community. I met a gentleman that was working on a project around an interpretive center at the PNE, as that was somewhere where Japanese internment happened. I also met someone that works with sport as a way to grow understanding between cultures. They seem to be quite focused on soccer, and I aim to put them in touch with some local people and see if we can get some sort of something happening in that regard. I think also, can we go next slide? I think this just shows trying to show the setup. I've never been anything quite like that. And that walkway is only up to my knees when I went across it. So yeah, it was quite a setup, and very just such generous hosts. Go next slide, please. So these are the captains of the two boats, and in particular, the woman standing to my right is Captain Miho Otani, and she's the first woman to captain a Navy training vessel and a destroyer. So it was very nice to meet her, and I was relying on my camera to catch the name tag on the other gentleman, but it failed my note-taking method. So he was the captain of the other vessel. You go next slide, please. And I was lucky enough to meet with Ambassador Kanji, and this is the Japanese ambassador to Canada. He, for those of you interested in things on YouTube that are interesting, he was a former consul general in New York, and he had a little moment of internet fame by playing Star Spangled Banner on electric guitar in the style of Jimi Hendrix, as a way of showing his appreciation for being assigned to New York. I met him in the reception line, and then sought him out after to just to let him know about our sister city and that arrangement. And if we can go next slide, and he put me in touch. He connected me with this gentleman who is Mr. Kohei, is a consul general in Vancouver, and was quite keen to help facilitate our visit with Shimizu. So it was great to make these connections there. Also able to connect with the consul general of the British consul general. I've met a couple of times now. She spends a lot of time in Squamish rock climbing. So good to see him again. And the mayors of Hope and Coquitlam were there as well. And it was great to hear about their connections to the Japanese community. Next slide, please. Grad ceremony. So on the 16th, Friday, was able to attend House Sound Secondary Grad, which was a hot ticket. It was sold out, and they were controlling how many people could be there. But it was really great to witness that. And having been in that room for my own grad, it was quite moving. It was a good show. And then we'll go to the next slide, please. So then some folks spoke about the Sikh parade, and I just pulled some of the chief coverage so people could see what was happening. I've got a few slides here. You can go next slide, please. Trying to get the scope of it here. I think this shot captures it nicely. And I think of it, you'll go ahead one more slide, please. And really this captures the event to me more than the others. Everyone had that look on their face that was there. And that was the Sikhs and as well as the people that either intentionally sought it out or wandered into this event and wondered what it was. And I was really struck with the concept of Seva, which is selfless service, and they fed the thousands of people that were there, and it was no one left hungry. That is for sure. And lots of traditional dishes as well as ice cream and fruits and just and done with a smile. I met many people that came up, traveled up from Vancouver. The busloads of people came from Surrey and I think as far out as Abbotsford to attend. And it was great. And in my previous in my previous life, I was busy every weekend. So this is my first time I've been able to attend, and it will not be my last. It was truly remarkable. I also think that later that I think it was it Sunday night, there was Hardeep Singh Najjar was shot outside. He was the president of a Surrey Sikh temple. And I think it's highly likely that he was here doing some selfless service for our event, and if not, just embodying those ethos. And I think that's incredibly tragic. And just to go from seeing all these happy people spreading, serving our community in such a happy way, and then having that piece of news come in on to be followed up on the Monday was really jarring for me. I think so. My hearts go out to that community. I think is that the last slide? Okay, good. So there you go. That's a little snapshot of what the last couple of weeks has been like for me. And thanks for tuning in. I don't know if it I don't know if it saved any 1,000 words, but hopefully it conveyed what was happening, what happens out there sometimes. Oh, and one last thing in the community forest. There was a lot of students present and have booths. And one I picked up in particular was a handy guide to evidence-based forest immersion. So this is if you want a scientific method to quantify the benefits of being in the forest, they're on it. And I have, and so it was really interesting to see all the different aspects of the work happening around forestry in general, and particularly the community forest. That is it. So I'll be looking for a motion to terminate. Goes to Councillor Hamilton and seconded by Councillor Stoner. All in favor? Motion carries. Now we do have to resume our closed meeting following this, so we'll take a little recess and then we'll reconvene our closed meeting. We'll do 10-minute recess. There you go. Thank you.